Hello guys, so in this video we are going to be talking about Ascariasis. Now Ascariasis is a helminth infection that is caused by Ascaris lumbricoid. Now this is also known as the giant roundworm. It is a nematode known as the giant roundworm, and it's prevalent in the tropical and subtropical regions of the world, and it's also prevalent in regions where there is minimal or no sanitation. Okay, so the infective form of this worm is the egg. Now the egg is coated with protein coat that is resistant to heat and chemicals. So if not properly cooked, this egg can still survive a certain amount of heat. So it's advised that your food are properly cooked. Now this worm can be acquired by ingestion of contaminated food and contaminated water. So when you take in food that is contaminated with this egg, you're at high risk of suffering from ascariasis. And this worm can be very long at times. It can be up to 40 cm in length and 5 to 6 millimeter in diameter. So the thickness can be up to 5 to 6 millimeter, and the length can be up to 440 cm. Okay, so that is just the basic morphology of Ascaris lumbricoid. So we are going to look at the life cycle of Ascaris lumbricoid. Now, the life cycle of Ascaris lumbricoids begins when you ingest contaminated food or water. So when you ingest food that is contaminated with the egg of Ascaris lumbricoid, the life cycle begins. Now, when it gets to your intestine, what happens is that it hatches to form larva 1, which is the first stage of the larva. Now, from the intestine, it begins to burrow the mucosa of the intestinal wall to look for a capillary. So when it finds a capillary, it gets into the capillary, and the capillary takes it directly to the liver. So in the liver, the larva 2 stage is formed. So in the liver, the larva 2 stage is formed. Now from the liver, this migrates to the heart. Now this takes a route. The route between the liver and the heart is known as the hepatic vein. So the hepatic vein helps to move the larva in the liver to the heart. So on getting to the heart, it now moves to the lungs, following the pulmonary artery route. So by the help of the pulmonary artery, it gets to the lungs. Now on getting to the lungs, it forms the larva 3, which is the third stage of the larva. Now from the lungs, it moves to the alveoli. Now in the alveoli, it forms the larva 4. It moves into larva 4, which is the last stage of this life cycle, the last stage of the larva. Now in the alveoli, it moves to the bronchi. From the bronchi, it moves up to the trachea. Now when it gets to the trachea, what happens is that you begin to feel a sensation of coughing. You just want to cough. And then when you cough the larva into the pharynx, most times when people cough, they do not spit it out, they swallow it back. Now when you cough and swallow it back, you're just doing the worm good, because you are pushing the worm back into your system for it to mature in the stomach. So when you cough from the trachea into the pharynx and you swallow back, it goes directly to the stomach. And when it gets to the stomach, it grows into the adult stage, and the adult stage can lay up to 200,000 eggs per day. So imagine you have up to 20 of these worms. You can now imagine the number of worms you would have in your stomach. So this is just the life cycle of the Ascaris lumbricoid. And this life cycle is basically divided into two: the primary migration and the secondary migration. The primary migration starts from the intestine and ends in the lungs. Meanwhile, the secondary migration begins from the lungs and ends in the stomach. And there's another type of migration known as the aberrant migration. Now, in the aberrant migration, the worm misses its route. Instead of moving through this route, it goes into other organs. The organs like the eye, the brain, and maybe the spinal cord. Now, when it gets to this organ, it forms calcified structures. It forms calcified structures, especially in the brain. So when it gets to the brain, it gets to its endpoint and it calcifies there. And as a result of that calcification, the brain cells, some part of the brain cells is being destroyed. Okay, so that is what happens in the aberrant migration. Now, there are other types of migration where the adult of this worm can move into the lymphatic vessel and block the lymph, thereby leading to an enlargement of maybe the legs, the joints, and other affected parts of the body. Okay, so this is just the entire summary of the life cycle of Ascaris lumbricoid. Now, the Ascariasis can be treated with a series of drugs, and the most used ones, or the frequently used ones, are the albendazole for the giant roundworms, and you can also have other alternatives. But before we look at the treatment, it is important and better that we try to prevent this condition. How do you prevent this condition? Make sure that your food is well cooked to a point where you are satisfied that the eggs of the Ascaris lumbricoid is destroyed. Because if your food is undercooked, then you have high chances of getting this infection. Also, your environment should be kept clean.